Welcome back to Grumpy Old Men. Now, we've changed the boys on the couch because we've just had Rod Ashman, of course, a great rival of Tony Shaw. And sitting next to Doug Hawkins is one of his great rivals because it's rivalry week in AFL football, round 3, and it's the great Bryan Wood from the Richmond Football Club. Bryan, welcome to Grumpy Old Men.
Hello, Kevin. It's a delight to be here with such astute company.
Such luminaries.
You mean that?
Luminaries,
You
yeah.
mean that?
No. Kevin, yes. Kevin.
It started already.
Kevin is a legend.
Tell us about growing up as a young boy in Blackburn and making your way down to Richmond.
Where is Blackburn?
Well,
Eastern suburbs.
That's right.
It's not warm.
he asked me the question.
Sorry, mate.
As a kid, I never had any ambitions to play football, I've got to tell you. In Blackburn, it was just a matter of playing footy yourself on a Saturday morning and try and get out and get a kick and have some fun. So that was life in Blackburn.
Did you have your own ball as a little boy?
Absolutely.
Did you?
Absolutely.
Did you have any brothers to play with, or did you
had
have
a
to
big
play
brother
with
who
your
kept...
sisters?
No, big brother who kept knocking me around a bit. So that wasn't
see.
good.
Yeah.
So in those days, of course, there would have been zoning, and Blackburn would have been in Richmond's zone.
Yeah.
And someone like, Graham Richmond or one of their talent scouts just sort of wandering around the area would have said, or Alan Schwab would have said, come on down?
No, well, in fact, it was through a thing that they call a scholarship squad, where they invited 200 or 300 kids from school down on a Sunday morning to train, and after 3 weeks, they cut the 200 to 300 down to 20, and somehow I ended up in the 20, and I was invited down to train with the thirds, the under-19s, the following year.
You played for Richmond?
Yes, I did, absolutely.
You
My
were a
family.
Tiger. You were a Tiger.
Yeah, my father was a Tiger supporter, my brother and I are Tiger supporters, absolutely.
Who coached the thirds? Wasn't
First I was Slug.
Oh, Slug Jordan.
First year,
How
Ray
did that
Jordan.
go?
That was an experience.
Yeah, that'd be real.
I was 15 years old under Slug. I mean, what sort of experience was that? Good education.
The premiership in the under-19s with Slug because he won so
Absolutely.
many premierships.
Yeah, first year we won the flag, and in that year the under-19s, yeah.
So how many years did you spend in the under-19s?
1 year, and then 1 year with the seconds, and then the next year I played in the ones.
What
yeah.
about the under-19s when you won that grand final? The personnel that went on and played like you did, the seconds, was there many that came through exactly along with you?
No, there weren't.
No?
There weren't many. It's interesting that there were many more skillful players I played with who never made it to senior football.
Gee.
It's interesting.
My memory may be going. Did the under-19s play on the cricket ground? Were there 3 games then?
The finals, absolutely.
the finals,
In fact, there were 4 games. I think they played the under-17s at 8 a.m. and then the under-9.
Yeah,
Right,
From
that's
memory.
right. That's right.
So yeah, we played at about 9:30 on a grand final morning. It was,
There's
a big
another
deal.
tradition gone.
What was it like, Brian, to walk into Richmond at a young age and you cop the KBs and these sort of type of players, the greats of Richmond?
Well, it was fascinating to be in this change rooms with Francis Burke and Kevin Bartlett and Royce Hart and Tom Hafey and Kevin Shin. It was just quite amazing for a 15-year-old kid from
Did they
Blackburn.
speak to you?
Yeah.
Did they speak
No.
to you?
You kept them speak to you.
Bobby, I don't speak to anyone unless they played 350 games.
That'd be right.
Kevin Shetty would have spoke to you.
Brian, were you a wingman when you played in the under-19s?
Yes, yeah.
That's
Yeah, played in the
unusual
wing.
because you generally find those who come up
Play
through
in
the
a different
ranks
spot.
generally play in a different position. By the time they get to senior football, if they're a full forward, they're playing full back. If they're a half-back flanker, they're playing on the wing, but always a wingman.
Well,
Yeah,
you were
or-
a back pocket player.
No, I was a rover.
Well, you just give
No,
me
in
your own.
fact, I played in the centre when I was in the under-19s. Played as a rover when I played in the seniors.
No, when I was in the under-19s, I was very slight. I was slighter than you, and therefore I couldn't play anywhere else except on the wing.
You couldn't be any
was
slighter
too
than you
small.
are now, could he?
Yeah, well,
You're playing weight, aren't you?
just
Right.
on, yeah. Yeah, just
84
on playing.
kilos.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's your memories of your first game?
First game, MCG against North Melbourne, and I believe I played on Paul Feltham. I think we won, but I can't remember.
Can't remember your first game whether you won or not.
No.
Fair dinkum.
No.
What, you're a bit nervous?
No, just a tad. Just a tad.
He had a great record. I'm a kangaroo bloke. I mean, Keith Gregg was my favourite, but you had a great record on Keith Gregg. I mean, the year he won the Brownlow, I think it was 73-74. You guys won the flags, I think 73-74.
Correct, yep.
But you had, Brian, you had a great record on Keith Gregg, who was a superstar.
It's quite interesting. Yeah, Keith Gregg was fantastic. You know, great player, skillful, and for some reason, Tom Hafey decided he'd want me to play on
Gregg. Yeah.
Keith Gregg, and you know, on the Wednesday night onwards, all you'd think about is this Keith Gregg running around kicking goals and bouncing the ball, running down the ground, and yeah, I sort of worked out a plan and worked to it, and it turned out pretty well.
Who was the one you couldn't get? Yeah, you've always got someone who you played against and thinking, I should beat this bloke, but they always got you. Is there someone in football in that time?
Well, I only played on Robbie Flower, I think, once or twice.
Oh, well, he can get everybody,
well,
doesn't
yeah.
he?
He got us all.
He got 'em all.
He got us all, Robbie Flower.
And when I only played on him once or twice, I thought, that's a good omen. Yeah, none of us played up to it. So Robbie was always a nuisance.
What sort of impact did Tom Hafey have on a young Bryan Wood?
Staggering. Tommy was almost like my second father. I can remember going down and playing games with his daughters, who were, 8 and 12 and 16 or whatever age they were at the time, and I was about 17, and I could sit in his room and eating ice cream with him, and he was just like a second father. He was just outstanding bloke.
When you look back at the famous Richmond centre line, Burke, Barrett and Clay, and we hear about that all the time, in those three premiership sides that you played in for the Tigers, 73, 74 and 1980, what was the centre line? Who was in the centre and who was on the other wing with Bryan Wood?
Well, I mean, you talk about the great centre lines, and you mentioned Burke, Barrett, Clay, but it's quite interesting, that Richmond had a great centre line in Wood, Stewart and Walsh. Now, everyone talks about Burke, Barrett and Clay, but how many Brownlow medals did they win between? 0. You know how many Wood, Walsh and Stewart?
Yeah, three.
Three between us.
Well done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Still got the three of them.
That's irrelevant. We had a great centre line.
Have a look at this ground here.
We were talking to Rod Ashman before about great rivalry, and that's what round 3 is all about. Carlton and Richmond were really, really great rivals.
Oh, yeah, Carlton and Hawthorn, I guess, in the end, but Carlton were the big rivals we had in those days, yeah, as a team. But, of course, there were many other
Who's that little fellow?
players who we'd...
Gee, I made Woody look good.
Oh,
Made Woody look good. He
good.
just stood out there all day and took marks on his chest.
Yeah, I thought you were going to handball it to me, then I realised it was you, Kevin.
Woody, you were very quick. You're obviously very quick, but as well, you were very good overhead. You were very strong overhead.
Well, I guess Richmond started that tall centre line player, wingman, and that was the plan, that I was a bit over 6 foot and we could mark the ball from kick-outs, and other teams obviously followed, although I did play on Val Perovic. He's about 6'5", I think, there on the wing. Couldn't believe it.
Well, KB, what did you think of Woody when he first came to the club? Like, you didn't talk to him for a couple of years, but like you said, but now what did you think of him?
No, I think most people thought he was a fantastic player because he had the ability, as you say, he always used to get the job playing on someone like Keith Gregg, and that was really, really tough. But Woody had pace, he was a good mark, he was very, very dogged. Was very good chaser and a very good tackler, and was also a very, very good kick. And when you look at those premiership sides of 73 and 74 and 1980, I mean, Bryan played on the wing. He was the sort of the one person who lasted through that entire era. I think Wayne Walsh was there for a couple of premierships, and I think then Woosha Welsh turned up in 1980 and played on the other wing. So,
And Jeff
I mean,
Raines
to be on the
was-
wing from 73 right through to 1980 and play in the three winning premiership sides, I mean, you've got to be pretty darn good.
And Rainsy would have been in the middle in 80, I think.
1980.
In 80, yeah. So, we had Richmond always were renowned for having a reasonably good centre line, yeah.
What about the training under Tommy? How did you... Because you were slight, and a lot of blokes don't take that as well as others. So you didn't worry?
When I was young, I was a bit silly, I guess, like some of us, and you didn't care if you got hurt, and you just ran in and crashed in, and that didn't bother me. It's just when I got to my mid-20s and late 20s, I started to think about this training thing. You better ease up a bit.
Okay.
And I've then started to follow Kevin's lead and...
Not train at all?
Well, no, I didn't quite get to that stage, but I followed his... There was an odd corner that I'd sort of cut, whereas when you're an 18-year-old, you just... Tommy, 6 laps outside the white line, you ran outside the white line.
You must have thought AFL football, Bryan, was pretty easy. You've turned up to play in the seniors in 1972, and the Tigers lost a grand final to Carlton, which expected to win but didn't. Then in 73, you're playing in a premiership side. In 74, you're playing in a premiership side. You must have thought, wow, how good's this?
Yeah, at the end of 74, you'd be thinking, well, what's all the fuss about? This,
It's easy.
Yeah, it's easy, and that was one of the things of the Richmond players is, in those days, is we were expected to play in the finals, and if we lost a game during the year or round 7, we lost a couple in a row, it didn't matter, we'll be playing in the finals. It was just the attitude we had, and some people used to think we were a bit arrogant, but it was just confidence that we would be there in the finals.
Are you a Richmond man now? Does football gather you now?
Yeah, I had a stint at jumping on the board last year against Clinton Casey, and of course we couldn't get voted in.
Yeah.
But I was very keen to see the Tigers
Uplifted.
get back to where they should be as one of the big 4. So very much, yeah, the soft spots for Richmond, yeah.
Was that a tough moment for you, Brian? Because a number of senior players or former players came out and wanted change at Richmond. And of course, Bryan Wood was one who actually joined the ticket and was there. I know that Francis Burke and Billy Barrett gave support, but you actually put yourself right on the line and said, well, I'll go for change and I'll put myself up and I'll put myself to the members. I think you got the most votes of any other candidate of the challenging ticket, which showed the response that people had to Bryan Wood, but the ticket couldn't get through. Was it tough for you to sort of take that stance?
Yes, it was. Sorry, at the beginning it wasn't, and then as we got into it, with circumstances were that the president-elect of Charles Matchek was overseas so much, and because of the Brendan Swab unfortunately, didn't have such a good image with the public, that they saw that I was the one that should be doing the interviews and a lot of the speaking on TV and radio, and that became quite draining, and you had to be careful what you said, and so yeah, that was the draining part of it all, having to be the front or the face, if you like, for the whole election, and yeah, that was the draining part. And in the end, I thought, the day before the election, I thought, I've had enough of this. You know, I've been interviews here, there, and the pressure's on, I've had enough. And then we didn't get in. I was dirty that we didn't get in, because I believe we could have, it was time for change then, and we believe we had the impetus to make change in the right areas, off the ground, that is.
We'll take a break. Stay with us, Woody, because when we come back, we'll talk to Bryan Wood about talking about change, because he changed from the Richmond Football Club and become a Don, and also played in a premiership with the Mighty Bombers. Back after the break.
Eric Leake to kick it off, and short one to Bartlett, who just chipped in there. The left foot kick down towards Wood, who's struggling for form. He's certainly not struggling for form after that. That's a builder.
Well, that was a fantastic mark. I didn't realise
What about
that.
you got a cheap stat in the pocket. He was going crooked. Everybody getting a cheap stat.
I was ahead of my time. Ahead of my time. What did you win for that mark of the day,
It's
Woody?
interesting you ask that, Kevin, because Jeff Rains and I have a pretty good relationship, and for that mark of the year, for the whole year, I might add, what I received for that was 0. Zip, zilch, nothing, not a cracker.
Sure.
Next year, Jeff Rains won mark of the year. You know what he got? A brand new SS Commodore.
You would do it, Woody, wouldn't you?
Oh, and you don't think Rainsy rubs it in? What was that mark of the year? What one did you take again, Woody? He's a shocker. I got Zip.
We spoke before about 1980, of course. We loved that game, Tony, because we won by the record number
You played Tony in
of
that?
points ever.
Well, I did all right because I was on the bench till half time, and we were 74 points behind.
You get a run?
We were worried about you coming on,
I got
actually.
half time, and I stemmed the tie. We only got beaten by 80.
Oh, that's a good effort, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for it.
I remember at half time, Tommy Ovey said, now listen, be careful, they like to throw Tony Shaw on the ground.
Wait a few blokes.
If you do, Woody, you make certain you pick him up. Brian, the next year after that premiership win, you became captain of Richmond in 1981. But when we look at what took place in that short period of time, David Cloke was captain of Richmond and left and went to Collingwood. Bryan Wood left and went to Essendon. Jeff Rains left and went to Collingwood. Brian Taylor went to Collingwood. I mean, all of a sudden the fabric of the club started to sort of dissolve. Why did Bryan Wood leave the Richmond Football Club?
M-O-N-E-Y.
I wouldn't think so. There wouldn't be that much
really.
money in those days.
Were you sacked?
No, I wasn't sacked, and it wasn't money, Bob. We didn't all leave for money.
Was it injuries, Woody? Did you have injuries going on?
Oh, everyone had injuries. Who hasn't got an injury at 28?
We all had.
Exactly. So
There
everyone
wasn't
had
injuries?
No. There was a couple of issues I had with the coach at the time, and we disagreed on a few things, and I felt, well, if I'm not enjoying my football at that age, I better go somewhere where I am enjoying my football, because it's getting too hard to play if you're not enjoying it.
Who was the coach, Brian, then?
Francis Burke.
Burke.
So when you decided you were going to leave, did you look at any other club bar the Bombers, or was the Bombers your first choice because Kevin Sheedy was coaching the Bombers?
No, I'd signed with North Melbourne. But Ron Joseph and Graham Richmond are the two people who ran the appropriate clubs at the time.
Ran the football world.
Hated each other, and Graham Richmond said, we will never clear you to North Melbourne, and we'll go to court and all this sort of rah stuff, and yeah, whatever. Ron Joseph convinced me, don't worry about him, that's rubbish. And
Family show.
that's manure. And we'll support him. We'll take him to court, and no problems. Well, anyway, after 6 weeks, no clearance, and Sheedy, and I spoke to Kevin, and I spoke to St Kilda as well, but I spoke to Kevin Sheedy at Essendon, and he said, look, I can get a clearance for you in 24 hours. And I said, and he came around several times after I'd signed with North Melbourne and said, they'll never clear, Graham won't clear to Joseph and North Melbourne. I can get a clearance in 24 hours. And after 6 weeks, I was sick of this and I said to Shees, look, if you can get me a clearance in 24 hours, I'll sign with you. He said, no problem. He rang me the next day and said, I can get a clearance. I'll get a clearance. I said, well, I've signed with North. He said, don't worry about that. Go and talk to Ron and tell him you want to come to us. And I did, and Ron Joseph said, well, that's fine. If you reckon you want to go to Essendon, well, so be it. And he let me out of the contract. So I signed with Essendon.
Well, it turned out to be a good move because, well, first of all, in 1983, you played in a grand final.
Yes, the first year we played.
First year with the Bombers, you found yourself again in the grand final.
Yep.
After losing grand final the previous year, also with the Tigers. So 2 losing grand finals in successive years.
Yes, it's a good trivia question, that. Who plays with 2 consecutive losing grand final teams in different teams?
Be one of the few players to ever do that.
Yeah. So it's not such a good thing to play in losing teams, but yeah, I was fortunate to go to Essendon when they were on the up, and yeah, played with another great club and a great team.
How do you compare the clubs, Richmond and Essendon, right? Hard to compare them in that era, in that time?
No, I felt they were similar, and I felt they were similar because of Kevin Sheedy's influence at Essendon. Richmond were brilliant, fantastic club, and I found Essendon to be I was impressed equally by them. A terrific bunch of players, keen to win, desperate to win, and the Sheedy influence was definitely there.
Now, Bryan, we've had Ashy in before you and he looked lovely and clean. Now, you're a most elegant looking gentleman. What do you do now?
I work in real estate, Bobby.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm a,
Bobby loves
pillar
real
of
estate,
society.
And that's been your career?
I've been in that for about 8 years.
Yeah.
Bob's upset with people with real estate, Bryan, because he put Dennis Marshall onto a little bit of land over in Western Australia, and Dennis bought it, and it's now worth $28 million. And Bobby never got a cut of it.
He's got his 10%.
So he's upset with people in real estate, aren't you, Bob?
No, but it is. It's interesting to see how footballers who have had great careers go on and do things that, you know, was it your first choice or what was it?
No. I only got in real estate eight years ago. I was in printing for many years, and that was under Tommy Hafey's influence. I got into printing, yeah.
What about Sheeds? Was Sheeds different to how he played the game at Richmond, then went and, you know, you hadn't seen him as a coach, but you've gone from Tommy Hafey to, I think, Tony Jewell, then Francis?
Barry Richardson was there as well.
Barry Richardson was there.
Was Sheeds, you amazed with some of the things he tried in games when you got to Essendon?
No, I wasn't amazed. I wasn't surprised because Kevin did similar surprising things on the ground as a player.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons I said to Sheedy why I wasn't going to Essendon originally, was because he trained everyone too hard, and that's why I was going to North Melbourne. And he convinced me that he'd mellowed and, you know, he'd look after the older blokes. Well, once I'd signed, he forgot all about that, really. But no, Kevin was always prepared to look outside the square.
Yep.
Who was your best Tiger? Who was probably the best player at Richmond and at Essendon? It's a hard question.
Oh, gee, it's hard.
Is there anyone you just pick out like
well, Royce, Francis,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Didn't actually mention him.
Silly question.
I didn't want to say Kevin because I'd embarrass him.
That's right.
that's right.
Royce and Francis, I just admired.
You had Madden, you had Watson, you had...
Terry Danaher, I've got to say, I
TD.
admire as much as anyone at Essendon because of his attitude to footy and, you know, win and have some fun.
When you actually won the premiership with the Bombers in 1985, what was the feeling for Bryan Wood? Did you think, I never thought I'd be in this position again? It was 1980 since you last won a premiership. 5 years is a long time when you're getting towards the end of your career. So it was something that you really savoured. Did you have, you know, a bit in you that sort of said, well, for all those who thought I was finished 5 years ago, sort of up you at the same time? I mean, was there any sort of feeling there at all that you'd proved people wrong?
No, not that feeling of up you, I prove you wrong. It was more a sense of relief that the biggest decision I'd made is to leave Richmond then, and it was a matter of, well, who am I going to go to? I don't really care, but I was glad I went to Essendon. So I played in the final in 83 and lost, and then missed the 84 through injury, and then played in 85 and we won. So it was more relief that I'd made the decision to go somewhere and we'd actually won a flag.
Is that the overwhelming feeling that you had in all your premierships? Because I remember asking KB before 1990, I said to him, it was on a show I think, I said, what was the feeling? And in all his premierships you said, relief that you were finally at the end of the year, all that hard work's paid? Is that what you felt after?
Not so much relief at the end of the year, but relief that I'd gone to a club where we'd won a flag.
But even with Richmond, what feelings did you have with those grand finals? Were they a bit different?
Oh, Well, the first one in '73 was, I was very young and silly and did a lot of silly things, and I don't remember a lot of.
Generally, I reckon it's relief because it's over and you've won it, because there's a great deal of pressure to win the premiership. Woody, thanks for joining us. It's great to catch up with one of the greats of the Richmond Football Club, one of the greatest wingmen ever to play the game.
You didn't talk about one of the times I played on the old mate Dougie.
Well, we know that you carved him up. We know you carved him up. Bryan, thanks for joining us, and also Rod Ashman for joining us on Grumpy Old Men. We look forward to your company next week on Grumpy, when we have two more stars from the good old days of AFL football. We'll catch you then.